What's language got to do with it? The link between language development and theory of mind development. By Julia Schmidt, Laura Wigginton, Lynette Yang, Daniel Mosgap, and Alex, the Accessibility Reader.
Two of the most fundamental elements of human cognitive capabilities are the ability to communicate through complex language systems and the attainment of a theory of mind. Interestingly, both language and theory of mind develop at relatively the same time in a person's life, between birth and the age of about 5. Due to this and other similarities between language and theory of mind, many researchers have postulated that the two develop together, with either one influencing the other, or both being influenced by a third factor.
Studies have found a variety of conflicting evidence. Some suggest that language development leads to theory of mind development, some suggest that theory of mind development leads to language development, and still others suggest that the relationship between language and theory of mind development is bidirectional. However, once each of these two large concepts is broken down into smaller components with different developmental timelines, a more clear pattern of unidirectional relationships emerges. In what Malley in a 2002 article refers to as cascading development, the rudimentary elements of language and theory of mind build on one another until the person emerges with a fully developed theory of mind and a mastery of language.
Before we explore how the components of language development and theory of mind build upon one another, we must first discuss the respective components of each. Language development is the attainment of verbal skills to be able to connect thoughts and ideas in a coherent manner. But learning to communicate doesn't happen all in one go. Language develops gradually, with various components involved in the process.
The first building block of language development is phonology, the ability to understand what sounds are used in a language. This is distinguished from phonetics, which relates to the physical production and transmission of the sounds of speech. Phonology is more concerned with the way sounds function across languages to encode meaning. Furthermore, phonological processing skills, such as encoding phonological representations of spoken words, maintaining them in memory, and retrieval, plays an important role in language development. Phonological processing refers to the use of phonological information in processing written and oral information. Hence, you can see why this is pretty crucial for speech development.
Let's move on to another branch of language development, semantics. This component deals with the study of meaning in words. It largely focuses on the relationship between words, phrases, and symbols, and their denotation. More simply put, semantics refers to the understanding of words. To illustrate this, let's take the sentence, "The truck hit the car," for example. A child with a firm grasp of semantics will know and understand the individual words in the sentence.
Next up, we have syntactic development. Syntax is the set of rules and principles that govern the structure of sentences in a given language. In other words, it's how words from different grammatical categories can be appropriately combined and how the arrangement of the words affects the meaning of a sentence. Let's return to our previous example sentence, "The truck hit the car." A child with a good syntactic ability not only understands each word of the sentence, the child also understands the importance of the word order. Truck comes before hit, which comes before car, and not car before hit before truck.
And finally, we have pragmatic development. Pragmatics also contributes to the study of meaning, but it differs from semantics. Semantics examines meaning that is coded in a specific language. Pragmatics, on the other hand, demands an awareness of the social aspects associated with communication. It not only incorporates conventional meaning, but also the social and cultural context and inferred intent of the speaker.
Next, we turn to theory of mind. Theory of mind describes the ability to represent, conceptualize, and reason about mental states, both for an individual's own mind and that of others. Human theory of mind development proceeds through an accumulation of components that are capable of building upon one another in order to reach the next developmental stage. The capacity for imitation, inferential sensitivity to desires, and capacity for joint attention are some of the first aspects to appear in theory of mind development. The capacity for imitation, according to a 2001 article by Meltzoff and Brooks, relates to the mechanism that mimics others' behaviors and provides a necessary condition for inferences about those internal states in others.
Repacholi and Gopnik in 1997 found that inferential sensitivity to desires appears around 18 months. Children around this age are capable of expressing and understanding what desires are in others. Perhaps an adult likes carrots while the child likes cookies. If the adult expresses a positive emotion towards a carrot, such as saying, "yum," and then says, "give me some," the child knows to give the carrot and not the cookie. Even though the child likes the cookie, she is capable of inferring the desire of another that is not the same as her own internal desire.
Joint attention is the shared focus of two or more individuals on a specific thing. The earliest form of joint attention comes around 2 months of age during interactions with adults, where the child and adult exchange looks and noises. Joint attentive abilities continue to develop as the child ages, and around 1 year, joint attention is demonstrated through grasping the concept of pointing as an intentional act. Around 15 months, children understand that physical objects can block line of sight. By 2 years, children are skilled at following gaze and pointing, as well as in understanding the target of another's attention in the context of time.
Sometime between the age of 3 and 4, children begin to develop an understanding of perspective taking and ignorance versus knowledge on the basis of personal experience. With regard to the former, perspective taking, Bork in 1975 used a modified version of Piaget's original Three Mountain task that utilized things more familiar to the child, like Grover from Sesame Street and scenes on a farm, rather than a doll and 3 mountains that Piaget first used. She found that children as young as 3 were able to perform this task with success and thus demonstrated the ability to comprehend a situation through a different perspective. Coming back to the latter point of knowledge stemming from personal experience, Pratt and Bryant in 1990 saw that looking leads to knowing in children. In other words, children understand that people gain knowledge of something by looking at it.
The next developmental milestone in theory of mind development is the ability to perform well on false belief tasks. The ability to attribute false belief is to recognize that others can have beliefs about the world that are incorrect. False belief is a strong marker for testing theory of mind and is usually mastered by age 4 or 5.
There are a variety of tasks that have been used to measure the extent to which children understand false beliefs. They include things like change in locations false belief tasks, unexpected contents false belief tasks, and appearance versus reality tasks.
With a cemented understanding of the theory of mind, we can draw links to pragmatic, semantic, and syntactic aspects of language. Because pragmatic ability depends on keeping track of listeners' and speakers' beliefs and intentions, it is by definition related to the theory of mind. Sure enough, an experiment performed by Eisenmajer and Pryor support this. Scores on a test of pragmatic ability were found to be related to false belief task performance in a study sample of children with autism.
Semantics, which is concerned with word meaning, has been argued to be important in the development of theory of mind as well. More specifically, researchers have contended that the theory of mind is dependent on the acquisition of particular terms that are used to refer to mental states. They found a relationship between a child's comprehension of words like think and know with their performance on tests of false belief understanding.
As for syntactic ability, the ability to combine words into sentences, mental state reports have a complex structure that consists of a main sentence with another sentence within it, which allows for the report of false beliefs.
With an understanding of the various developmental components of both language and theory of mind, we can now turn to the establishment of a unidirectional relationship, or rather a system of unidirectional relationships between theory of mind and language. As both abilities develop over the course of many years, it seems unlikely that all the components of one system are responsible for the development of all the components of the other. Instead, we propose that early theory of mind capabilities facilitate the development of early language abilities, while more complex language abilities are a precursor to more complex theory of mind abilities.
With regard to the former, specifically, joint attention contributes in large part to vocabulary development. To reiterate, joint attention is a shared focus of two individuals on an object or event, and there's an understanding between the two individuals that they are both interested in the same object or event. A child learns what an object is called because it is labeled by an adult during joint attention. However, object labels only contribute to vocabulary development when following the child's attentional focus, not redirecting the child's focus.
One of the first researchers to suggest that joint attention is crucial for the development of vocabulary was Tomasello. In a 1986 study, he found that infants that spend more time in joint attention with their mother develop larger vocabularies at an early age. For the child to recognize that the object is being labeled, she must recognize that both her attention and the attention of the adult doing the labeling are focused on the same object. This is evidence that an infant has an emerging understanding of others as intentional agents, which is an important aspect of a later theory of mind ability.
Researchers have various ways of testing for joint attention, including testing infants' proto-declarative pointing, following gaze, and following pointing. Infant gaze following shows that children can recognize where the adult is focusing and try to match the adult's focus. At around 9 months of age, kids follow the head movements of adults, but not the eye movements. Children demonstrate true gaze following at age 10 or 11 months. In an article published in 2002, Brooks and Meltzoff found that children look longer at objects in the direction of the adult's gaze if they know the adult can see the object. For example, children would look longer at an object in the direction of the adult's gaze if the adult's eyes were open rather than closed. This indicates that they recognize the adult gaze as a sign of attention and see that attention as significant. They also interpret the gaze as object-directed and about the object. This recognition of aboutness is crucial for object labeling to lead to vocabulary development.
In an article published in 2007, Brooks and Meltzoff found that children who were better at following an adult's gaze at age 10 or 11 months had better vocabulary at age 2. In addition, the duration of the child's gaze made a difference. If they followed an adult's gaze for longer, the child experienced faster vocabulary growth. Pointing behavior was also correlated with faster vocabulary growth in this study. Children demonstrated pointing behavior, which can also serve to unify the attention of the child and the caregiver on a common object. Pointing may be especially helpful because the infant is pulling the focus of the parent, and the parent can then label the object on which the infant is focused. Thus, this early component of theory of mind helps to facilitate early language abilities.
Some studies have found that joint reference, the mutual understanding that two people are referring to the same object, is more important than joint attention. Infants can differentiate that what an adult is looking at and referring to is different from what the infant is focused on. In an article from 1991, Baldwin found that if an infant, ages 16 to 19 months old, and an adult were focused on different objects rather than attaching the adult's label to whatever the infant was focusing on, the infant would recognize that the adult was labeling the object of the adult's attention. The infants in the study used the nonverbal cues of the adult to figure out what the adult was referring to. Even if the object the infant was focusing on was the only novel object in the room, meaning there was a lot of pressure to incorrectly match it to the label, they do not incorrectly match it to the adult's label if the adult was not focusing on it.
Indirect evidence for the link between joint attention and vocabulary development can be found in autistic individuals. Individuals with autism are impaired in the development of theory of mind and joint attention. Autistic individuals are also impaired in many aspects of language and have general language delay compared to peers. This suggests an association between joint attention, an early component to theory of mind development, and theory of mind and language.
Additional evidence for the link between joint attention and vocabulary development can be found in a study using chimpanzees. In a 2003 article, Povinelli et al. Found that chimpanzees noticed and altered their gesturing pattern when their partner's attention was not directed at the object that they themselves wanted. The chimpanzees were highly sensitive to how their own desires interacted with what the researchers' attention was focused on. This relates to our previously stated definition of joint attention. It is a shared focus of two individuals on an object or event, and there is an understanding between the two individuals that they are both interested in the same object or event. Thus, chimpanzees seem to show joint attention, which is an early component to theory of mind. In other studies, researchers have taught chimpanzees to sign by using joint attention to teach object labels. Chimpanzees show joint attention, an early component to theory of mind and primitive language skills. This suggests another association between joint attention and language development, but seen in a non-human animal. Due to the data in studies focusing on both chimpanzees and human children, there is a clear unidirectional link between joint attention and vocabulary development.
We now turn our attention to the ways in which complex language abilities lead to mastery of a more complex theory of mind tasks, and specifically false belief tasks. False belief tasks are a very common measure of theory of mind ability, and many of the studies that have used this kind of measure have found strong links to language development. A meta-analysis by Milligan, Astington, and Dack in 2007 found the effect of language ability on false belief ability was stronger than the opposite effect, regardless of the type of false belief task used. In addition, in their 2012 article, De Villers and De Villers found that deaf children with language development impairment mastered deception tasks at the same age as their peers, but were significantly delayed in false belief tasks. This indicates that false belief, but not other components of theory of mind, such as deception, is somehow affected by language development.
As for the language component that is most responsible for this relationship, we propose that it is the mastery of complicated syntactic structures, and particularly sentences with object complements, that precedes and facilitates the development of the child's ability to conceptualize false beliefs. Both abilities emerge between the ages of 3 and 4, which serves as an initial clue about their relationship. But the main reason that researchers have drawn the connection between the two is that complex syntax, such as object complements, are used to represent the phenomenon of false belief in language. For example, take the sentence, "Sammy thought the chocolate was in the cupboard." Because of the word thought, we can say that the sentence includes a mental representation. Furthermore, if the chocolate is actually on the table and not in the cupboard, then the sentence is also a representation of a false belief. Children must learn that the second half of the sentence, "the chocolate was in the cupboard," is an embedded sentence that is separate from and complementing of the first half, "Sammy thought." They must also learn that the sentence itself can be correct and represent a true event, even if the second half of the sentence represents something false. Many theorists argue that having the linguistic basis for this is a precursor for being able to form mental representations of false beliefs.
Support for this unidirectional relationship between syntactic mastery and false belief development is supported by the literature. In a 1999 study by Astington and Jenkins, the researchers found that a child's language ability at age 3 is predictive of her performance on false belief tasks later in the year, and that the children's mastery of syntax, rather than their semantic competence, was the most predictive. De Villers and Pyers found similar results on a longitudinal study of children ages 3 to 5 in 2002.
The idea that children develop syntactic mastery before they master false belief presents one glaring question. What would kids be talking about using this syntax if they don't yet understand false belief? And how can the children master this complex syntax if they have nothing to talk about? De Villers and Pyers suggest that children use this kind of complex syntax when talking about communication errors. A communication error would occur in a situation in which an actor says something that is not true. For example, if mom went to the store and bought oranges and then told everyone that she had bought apples, then the sentence, "Mom said that she bought apples," would represent a communication error. Notice that the sentences, "Mom said that she had bought apples," and "Mom thought that she had bought apples" are syntactically very similar. The main difference is that the latter includes mom's mental representation and a false belief, something that is more conceptually difficult to understand than a simple communication error. For this reason, children may learn how to use complex syntax of this sort by talking about communication errors and can then use their syntactic mastery to help them form mental representations of false beliefs.
Yet this relationship is still highly debated. Specifically, some researchers such as Slade and Ruffman in 2005 have found that semantic ability has an equally important influence on the development of false belief abilities. Researchers have contended that the development of theory of mind is dependent on the acquisition of particular terms that are used to refer to mental states. They found a relationship between a child's comprehension of words like think and know and their performance on tasks of false belief understanding. But if we keep in mind Malley's suggestion of cascading development, such a finding is not completely at odds with our proposal. As semantic development happens relatively early in comparison to false belief development, it is possible that the former contributes to the development of the latter. Thus, further study is needed in this area.
In conclusion, the relationship between theory of mind development and language development can be best understood as a series of unidirectional connections in which the different developmental components build on one another.
First, joint attention, one of the early components of theory of mind, leads to the development of vocabulary.
Later on, the mastery of complex syntax provides the foundation for children to develop the mental representations necessary for false belief tasks.
Thus, the development of the two are fundamentally connected on the level of individual developmental components.